That just helps Sioux Falls a little bit more. I don't think they need to be helped attendance-wise, but in terms of generating a really great atmosphere in that building and high ticket demand, I think the committee might then swap Augustana and get them to Sioux Falls. So.
Welcome to USCHO's Bracketology Xtra for Wednesday, March 11th, 2026. I'm Ed Trefsker alongside Jim Connolly. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen for April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 for tickets. Well, Jim, we're releasing this a little bit early today because there's a lot going on. But here's the updated NPI as of Wednesday morning. And bracket that could change pretty fast with all those games tonight. 6 of them on the schedule. Let's start out with the brackets. In Albany, the number 1 overall Michigan is joined by Minnesota, Duluth, Cornell, and as the Atlantic Hockey auto bid placeholder, Bentley. In Worcester, number 4 Western Michigan is joined by Providence, Wisconsin, and Massachusetts. In Loveland, Colorado, number 3 overall Michigan State is joined by the host Denver, Dartmouth, and St. Thomas. And in Sioux Falls, number 2 North Dakota has Quinnipiac, Penn State, and Augustana. The last team in as an at-large is St. Thomas, and the last team out, the first team that doesn't make it, is UConn. So, Jim, this was not just a straight bracket. You had to do a little bit of moving around, and it was basically for attendance, and it turned into a 3-team swap. How is it that this happened? It's all in the number 4 band, teams 13 through 16. How did it happen, and why did you make this move?
It was an interesting bracket when I looked at it. Once you put everything together, and I'll start with the swap. We made a swap in the number 3 seed band. I had originally started making a swap in the 2 seed band. I believe I had swapped, I think it was Denver and Quinnipiac to avoid an ECAC matchup. Once I did that, that put North Dakota in Loveland with Denver, which I'm not opposed to doing, but I found a cleaner way. I made the swap within the 3 seeds. And once that swap was made, what we were left with was Worcester without really much of an Eastern presence. At that point, we had just Western Michigan, Providence, and Wisconsin. The 4th team I had in there to start was St. Thomas. Once I looked at that, we lost UConn and Boston College from the field this week. So that really hurts the attendance in Worcester. And I'm trying to find a way to protect that one venue. The way I did it was to swap 4th seed UMass, which at the time was playing out in Sioux Falls, and put them into Worcester. That was a direct swap with St. Thomas. And then just because I've already made that swap, I swapped St. Thomas and Augustana out in Denver. That just helps Sioux Falls a little bit more. I don't think they need to be helped attendance-wise, but in terms of generating a really great atmosphere in that building and high ticket demand, I think the committee might then swap Augustana and get them to Sioux Falls. So basically send St. Thomas out to Loveland, Augustana into Sioux Falls, and most importantly, it gets UMass less than an hour from their campus, and that should help with the attendance in the Worcester region.
And it has a bonus that we haven't talked about a lot, and I don't think it's huge on the committee's mind, but it's a bonus that travel is made a lot easier, and you can do a bus trip rather than having to fly teams.
Yeah, we're not hearing about, the need to keep teams close to home or any of that. Maybe with fuel surcharges for airlines going up, maybe that'll be made a priority in the next few weeks, joking aside, but I do think, you're now putting Augustana on a quick bus, 15 minutes down the road from campus. You're now bringing UMass by bus. It's kind of a nice coincidence, not something that the committee probably looks at But it is much easier to take a bus ride than sending both of those teams on a plane.
And one that we don't mention that could still come up is in Worcester. Holy Cross is the host there. They're still alive in the Atlantic Hockey playoffs. And if they should win that league, then they would end up being placed there. And then you've got a little bit more configuring and moving around that you have to do that you wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, that's what I put at the end of the column this week. There are still 2 hosts besides Denver still alive. Union is the host in Albany. They won their opening round game. In Holy Cross, they're actually into the semifinals of Atlantic Hockey. So if they were to find a way to upset Bentley this weekend, that is certainly going to be on the table. If Holy Cross wins the Atlantic Hockey Championship, that will really send us into a scramble mode to get things. The one maybe silver lining, Omaha has been knocked out. They were the host in Sioux Falls. That is one region that does not have a host left.
So it looks like all of this ends up working out pretty well for attendance. And again, we want to reiterate that this is something well within the guidelines for the committee. In fact, it's not the primary thing. Primary thing is bracket integrity, but the next thing is moving within bands to help attendance and atmosphere.
That's really important to remember. I'm not sure that the committee makes all 3 of these moves, makes the 3-way swap. But I do think that they would do everything in their power to get that Worcester attendance up, and that would be really factored in by UMass being there.
Well, you've planted a seed and maybe given them a little bit of permission. Well, let's take a look at something interesting that happened this week. Actually happened for a couple hours on Sunday night. There was a little bit of excitement when North Dakota had moved to number 1 in the NPI. They ended up number 2 after the weekend's games. It's because Robert Morris was playing Air Force and RMU had been on Michigan's schedule. So the win by Robert Morris was enough to change things to put Michigan back up to number 1. But this isn't just kind of like trivia or math geek stuff. This is a pretty good indication how one night's worth of play, one game's worth of play, or when you get right down to it, the last night of all the championships can really tweak things around a little bit, not just moving teams around a little bit in the top 4, but we still have one team that can come in and out of the top 4 in Western Michigan. So it can come down and really change things around quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think, I want to actually hit this from the attendance point of view. We know that you want North Dakota in Sioux Falls, really close to campus. It would really drive some great attendance in that region. We've seen that building be packed with North Dakota fans in the past. So if North Dakota is the number 1 overall seed, much easier. Then you really start by placing them in Sioux Falls. You want to make the number 1 seed as close to campus as possible. When you don't have that team that's really even close, we have, this week it's Michigan. Michigan doesn't have a region that's close. Technically, the closest region to Michigan is Albany. So it's just one of these things. I think it would help the committee if North Dakota was the number 1 overall seed when you're trying to really get them to Sioux Falls. Instead of having to do some gymnastics to really move them there, I think it would be much better just to have them as the number 1 overall seed. All that said, you do have 5 teams that are kind of still in that mix, looking for a 1 seed. That 1 seed band becomes really interesting, especially, you just mentioned it, if you get Holy Cross as a host in Worcester. Whoever is the number 1 seed there, it's technically it's usually supposed to be the number 1 overall seed. If Holy Cross were the lowest remaining seed from the NPI, that would be a little awkward, as the number 1 seed then would have to play a Holy Cross team in their backyard. So I do look at this little blip of North Dakota moving up and then down. It's really good example of the weird momentum, movement, whatever you want to say, teams can get this time of year. And I don't think that this is NPI only. This is probably something we would have seen in the pairwise, just maybe it's different teams.
And of course, with 6 games on Wednesday night, this could move very quickly. This is maybe the most fluid week we're going to see here on out.
It should be, Ed. You know, you have the Hockey East first round games on Wednesday tonight. You also have Big Ten. They're going to play their opening round games tonight. So you will see probably a lot of movement before Thursday morning. So this does have a really low shelf life. And I will try to get some sort of a social media update out there with the bracket somewhere on Thursday or Friday heading into this weekend's games. But it is that time of year. A lot of movement, and it's the NPI will change almost daily.
I want to leave with one last thought here. On Tuesday, when we wrote the TMQ column, I wrote at the end that there were still 38 teams chasing 16 spots. Well, basically 11 of those spots are taken up, so it's really more like 27 teams chasing 5 spots. And then when you take Atlantic Hockey out of that as an auto bid, it's really 23 teams looking for the last 4 available spots in the tournament right now. So this could be very volatile along the margins there if there's some upsets in league tournaments.
The upsets are what we know every year is what we have to watch for. Last week, good week for the teams that are around the bubble, though, because all of the higher seeds advanced out of the rounds that were played last weekend. That's something to watch for as well this week.
Well, we've got the link to Jim's bracketology column with all the details on how he put this together in the show notes or in the description on YouTube. And by the way, you can watch on YouTube, youtube.com/USCHO. We're creeping in on that magic 1,000 mark with subscribers. So you could be the one to get us over the hump. Like and subscribe there. We've been sponsored by the NCAA Division I Men's Frozen 4, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas, ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Check out the column, drop in your comments about it. We love to see those. For Jim Conley, I'm Ed Trefsker, and this has been USCHO's Bracketology Extra.